This business was born kind of out of like a reckoning. It's never like one thing in life. It's like a domino effect of like one thing changes and everything else like falls apart to be kind of rebuilt, I guess, kind of like a phoenix, coming from the ashes. It's sounding dramatic, but when I started this business, everything in my life changed. And it felt like overnight. Within the course of like a few months, I actually got laid off from my corporate job. A bunch of people lost their jobs, and I had a really bad car accident, went through a breakup. I moved twice to my condo, moved apartments twice.
You were going through it.
Yes, had some like crazy health scares. And I kind of at that point like ran out of excuses, honestly, because I've been toying with the idea for years. I just knew in my head, like, this 9 to 5 is just like not for me.
From the Sarah Smiles Network, I'm Sarah Smiles, and this is the Consider This Worst podcast, a show about women who've built ideas, movements, and careers by questioning the status quo and challenging the norms in the hopes of inspiring other women. On today's episode, I have Ivey Jenkins, who is a career coaching specialist who provides a ton of insight on what it takes to really maneuver your way out of corporate America, start your own business, or potentially level up in corporate America. I also want to say that I currently have a promotion on my Instagram and TikTok giving away one free session with Ivey. So go ahead and make sure you're entering that so that way you can get your free session and get one step closer to having that dream career that you want. Anyways, this is an amazing episode about Ivey's journey as well as getting started in a career and a business that you may not be familiar with, but knowing that it's time for you to start something. Anyway, here is Ivey.
So it is Mercury retrograde today, so...
Someone just told me that. I just met someone for coffee and she was like, I'm so sorry, I'm so late. It's Mercury is in retrograde. And I'm like, well, that's me too.
I know how woo that sounds, but it is actually a real thing.
No, and the weird thing, it's so funny. So I made this post, obviously, that you commented on, and it was just asking like all of these business girls in Denver to like reach out, let me know who you are interested in like buying from or who you're interested in working with or who you are in general. And every single person that I have interviewed has been like on the same vein of like spirituality, horoscopes, and all of that fun like woo-woo stuff, which I did not know woo-woo was a word until I moved here. I was like, what? Like one of my friends, I moved from Boston, and one of my friends who moved here as well was like, yeah, it's super woo-woo. I'm like, it's super what?
It is the welcome to woo world, but I kind of love that about, oh, let's get that trending. I love that about Colorado. So where are you from?
Yeah, I've kind of been all over the place. So I grew up in Ohio, then moved down to the South, and then during COVID was in the South majority of the time. Graduated college in Ohio, moved to Boston, then San Diego, then here. So all over the map, but I definitely grew up with like most Midwestern values, but have been definitely exposed to New England style living, and especially like in my formative time out of college, learning about corporate structure and business life and how people interact with each other as adults in Boston was definitely very interesting. And what people say about New Englanders and New England in general is that it's cold and the people are cold. That is something too that I learned, but yeah, it has been a journey. But yeah, I went and saw a psychic there for a while, and when I tell people about it, they'd be like, what are you talking about? And so it's just refreshing to be in Denver and have that be so normal. Yes, literally. They'll be like, so what psychic are you going to? Because I'm going to one too. It's like kind of like a therapist. Like, who are you seeing?
Yeah, a pseudo therapist. Yeah, that's funny. I'm actually from the South too. You can't tell because I lost the accent, but I'm from Savannah, like Gone with the Wind in Georgia.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I used to live in Alpharetta, which definitely not close at all, but
oh my God,
same vicinity.
Yeah, I went to school in North Georgia, so very familiar with that area. What a small world.
Yeah, I love Georgia. It was definitely a little bit too humid, but I always think of like moving back to Alpharetta with like all of like the rolling green hills and the white picket fences. It's like not what you think of when you think of Georgia at all. It's like more reminiscent of like, I don't know, maybe Tennessee or like where was like Black Beauty filmed, wherever that was filmed, like that. That is what Alpharetta reminds me of. But it was also like one of those areas where it's just the husband has a wife that is creating a small business just to occupy her time sort of vibe. So I would love that to be me.
Yeah. Well, you are. I mean, this basically is. What do you do outside of this? I meant to ask you that.
Yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. That's so funny. So I came from like a very male-dominated professional background as well. My background's in
Oh, okay. Yo,
cybersecurity.
so let me cybersecurity. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, that's definitely male dominated. I can't say I want to say I know one other woman in cybersecurity, which like that shit is mind-boggling to me. It's like hackers and whatnot. I'm like, I'll be clicking them phishing links, y'all. I am clicking, keeping y'all employed. Okay.
Yeah, the mess ups keeping all of us employed. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I take it then you transitioned away from your cybersecurity job to do Jenkins Solutions full time.
Yeah, and I actually
Ooh.
so this business was born kind of out of like a reckoning. It's never like one thing in life. It's like a domino effect of like one thing changes and everything else like falls apart to be kind of rebuilt, I guess, kind of like a phoenix, coming from the ashes. Sounding dramatic, but when I started this business, everything in my life changed. And it felt like
Mm.
overnight. Within the course of like a few months, I actually got laid off from my corporate job. A bunch of people lost their jobs, and I had a really bad car accident, went through a breakup. I moved twice, sold my condo, moved apartments twice.
You were going through it.
Yes, had some like crazy health scares. And I kind of at that point like ran out of excuses, honestly, because I've been toying with the idea for years. I just knew in the
Mhm.
back of my head, like this 9 to 5 is just like not for me.
Mm-mm-mm.
And I know that, like, just, I mean, obviously working with my clients, like, I am not the only one who feels that way. I feel like I'd say majority of, like, I don't want to speak for everyone, obviously, majority of America, it's not just like dissatisfaction. I think post-COVID, a lot of people are kind of going through this, like, finding themselves, even still. Colorado's a great place to find yourself, by the way.
Mhm.
But yeah, I ran out of excuses. Honestly, I was like, well, I had been quietly kind of planning my exit for a few months prior, and then the universe, God, higher power, whatever you want,
Provided.
took care of it for me. They're like, no, we're just gonna like yank the rug. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
it's like it's do or die. It's now or never. So honestly,
Hmm.
as weird as it sounds, I'm actually really grateful that I lost my job.
Yeah.
I would not have built the business of my dreams had I not. So that's my.
Yeah. No, I feel like that is so pinpoint accurate about people not wanting to be in corporate. Like that's why you see the
Yeah.
rise in like people wanting to become influencers. Do people really want to become influencers or do they just want to have autonomy over their work life and be creative? Like let's be
Yeah.
so real. And I feel like I have heard so many people say that like number one, COVID was really fundamental for their life
Yes.
in terms of like discovering what their purpose is. And then I haven't heard people being laid off as like, yeah, this is going to be my incentive, but I've heard people like quitting their jobs, obviously. But the part about like coming into something that and just like diving headfirst and being like, there is no option out, like
Yeah.
that has been the story across the board of like, I gave myself no other option. There was no other option. I had to do this.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly like that springboard, that like fire under your ass, whatever you want to call it. It kind
Mm-hmm.
of is, as I've matured, as a person in my business, moved a little bit away from black and white thinking, but I feel like as an entrepreneur, like it is kind of do or die. It's like you're not going to half-ass this thing, and it's got to be something that
Mm-hmm.
you honest to God like love in your bone. And it's not to say
Yeah.
that parts of it that are not super fun, like the more admin oriented tasks, obviously, but yeah, I just been kind of dreaming about it quietly, I think, for years prior. And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny how if you would have told me a few years ago that I would be out here like living in Colorado, owning my own business, and my life would look the way it has, I just would have like laughed at you. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big believer in like everything happens for a reason, as corny as that
Mm-hmm.
sounds.
No, and the thing is, it's like everyone always comes out here and is like, this sounds so cliche, or like, this sounds so
Yes.
corny, or, but the thing is like, that is corny for a reason. It is like cliche for a reason because it is true.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is so empowering to hear other women saying like this really worked for me or this really like ended up being a positive thing that happened in my life because it is so easy to look back on an experience like getting fired and be like, woe is me. I have to be looking for a new job. But it takes a certain type of person to be like, this is my opportunity to do something for myself, which is clearly what you've done, which is extremely amazing. And now you're doing like something that you're super passionate about, but you're also helping other people recognize their potential and what they should be doing with their career and providing like insight and advice. So tell me more about that and like how you even got into doing that because to me, I'm like, okay, that job only exists as like a high school guidance counselor.
That's so nice. Not that high school guidance counselors aren't necessary and great, but yeah, I'm somebody who's always been interested in personal development. And I've always been, I don't know if we'll just call it woo, we'll just keep using that word. And I really found it hard to like fit into the corporate box, even though I did like what I was doing. I just found the structure of corporate, especially being in cyber, like really difficult
Hmm.
personally. And I'm also a really creative person. I actually grew up dancing. I taught dance on and off actually since
Oh,
college.
wow. What kind of dance?
All of it, but mainly ballet focused. I taught like
Oh,
ballet and contemporary. So, which is a very type A type of dance too, but it's still creative. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
incorporate that piece of myself into my business. Not that I'm dancing as part of my business, but just all the skills that it taught me. But at any rate, yeah, it really is a privilege. And you hear a lot of people who are entrepreneurs say this, but you're kind of, most of them that I've ran into in some form or fashion are like helping the younger version of themselves. Like the stuff that I wish I would have known or the stuff that I had struggled with years ago as I was just getting started. I now have the privilege of helping other women with. And I still
Yeah.
work with women. So,
That's amazing.
yes.
And obviously, like you've loved helping people, but there's so many different capacities that you can do that in. And I feel like cybersecurity, like how does that really relate to like the job market and all of that? Like, how did you decide, okay, this is the avenue that I'm going to help people and here's the business?
Yeah, I think again, just because I never fit in, I always felt like an outsider, even though I had
Mm-hmm.
done well in my jobs. I just felt like there was this voice in my head, not a literal voice, obviously, but in the back of my head that was like, this isn't for you, like this is not it. And
Yeah.
I would ask
Mm-hmm.
myself, I found more and more, and again, COVID, I'll just reference that like everybody else in the world, whenever the structure of work and like corporate change and there was more flexibility, I found myself starting to like daydream of like, if I knew
Mm-hmm.
the answer was going to be yes, like what would I dream up for myself? Again, really
Mm-hmm.
cheesy thing to say, but it is so true. And that's one of the things that I incorporate philosophically into my own business with my clients. It's like if you knew that you were going to get everything that you wanted, like what would it be? Not like
Mm-hmm.
I want this, not to say that the things that you want, the small things are dumb necessarily, but I'm talking like Disney level dream big because
Yeah.
what I'm living now is the life that I wanted a few years ago, which is crazy and it's really cool to look
Yeah.
see. And actually, part of the reason and how this business was born is I grew up, also snow skiing. So I come out west every year with my
Mm-hmm.
family skiing, but I had never really got to experience all the other cool things that Colorado has to offer, like the camping and the hiking. So I took a trip around the state with an ex, I think like probably about a year before COVID. And I was starting to have those kind of feelings of like, maybe this corporate thing is not for me, but what do I actually want to do? And I feel like I'm contributing, but not essentially just getting a paycheck. So the thoughts were kind of
Mm-hmm.
stir up at that point, sort of had some like dissatisfaction and questions in the relationship. And I remember coming out here, and just like, I just fell in love, like
Mm-hmm.
not, but like with Colorado. No offense to him. He's like the real, I do have to give him credit. Like, that, I didn't dream up this business on that trip, but that was honestly, it is a pivotal moment when I look back
Mm-hmm.
and my move out here and the business being born out here. I remember them
Yeah.
even still. We were
That's
in
wild.
yeah, and I just thought, okay, like I'm somehow going to make this happen. And it took a couple of
Mm-hmm.
years. But again, COVID happened. This was like 2019. Then, COVID rolls around and I was able to work remotely. So I went home to spend some time with family for a few months, saved up enough money. The money that I was saving from rent, I put towards my down payment of my condo. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure my family still thinks I'm nuts for not just this reason, but many more. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy a condo and I'm going to move to Colorado. And
Wow. Also buying a condo. Whoa.
I know, so fancy. Well, I will say, I'm so grateful that I got to experience homeownership, but the HOAs, I don't know if you've ever dealt with an HOA, that is not as fun.
No, my dad is living in an HOA right now. I think it might be for the first time ever. I don't really know, but they literally sent a letter to my dad's home saying that our cat was menacing the neighborhood because we let our cat out and roam them around. And they're
Well,
like,
that's fair.
yeah, you can't have your pet outside if it's going to be menacing. And my dad's like, so people can't walk their dogs? Question
I
mark,
know,
exclamation
right? Like,
point.
why is the cat really mean?
No, it's like they were saying that the cat was like pooping places and getting into people's trash. And my dad was like, first of all, my cat is not a raccoon. It
Yeah.
doesn't get into our trash in our home. And if you know anything about cats, you know they bury their feces.
Yeah.
So I'm not, you know what doesn't bury their feces? Dogs.
Dogs.
So are you going to tell and they put it under the guise of like, people have allergies. And he's like, okay, so you're going to tell everyone that owns a dog not to let their dog out to go to the bathroom? Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, that's his HOA that he's been dealing with. And he was basically just like, sent a letter back and just said, no.
No, no, I no.
But yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's one thing I do not miss. But again, I'm so grateful to, be living here. I'm staying in Colorado, but I'm moving at the end of the month to Wheat Ridge, so I'm really excited about that. But
Yeah, I'm in Lakewood.
oh no, ooh, okay, Nabes. All right, awesome. We'll have to like grab a coffee or something or take a walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about homeownership? You loved it, and then whatever we got into homeownership.
Yeah, again, the HOA was a little like much, and I love the neighborhood. I lived in Cheeseman, and it really is, it's a special neighborhood. It's gorgeous. The park is beautiful, and I met one of my best girlfriends there. They live in Cheeseman, and their dog is actually like basically in a relationship with my dog, like boyfriend girlfriend. So
cute.
yes, they've got like a fling, a long-standing fling. But yeah, I moved from that to another neighborhood, and this neighborhood's it just feels like it's not the neighborhoody feel that I want. And I'm someone who, again, referencing my old kind of corporate days, feels like a million years ago, like the environment that I work in. I'm pretty sensitive to my environment, and I find that I do, better work when I'm in a calm environment, and being just around nature around here is just such a privilege. So I'm excited.
Right. Yeah. No, and there's a lot of things that you said prior that I want to unpack. And one of them is that you feel like women specifically that you're working with are interested in moving away from corporate. And specifically, what intrigues me so much about what your business does is that you cater to people that both want to stay in corporate and just look and weigh their options, but also leave corporate and do something on their own. So that is a very multifaceted area that you have to know quite a bit about both things.
Yeah.
How did you come to learn that it would be beneficial to supply both options? And how do you really, like, if someone starts describing like what they want to do and they think they want to stay in corporate, but really what it sounds like is that they want to start a business, what is that? How does that work?
That's so funny, because eventually I think, and I found that like most clients I'm working with, even if they say they want to, they eventually end up exiting anyway. So, things are evolving as they always do in my business. And I think eventually I'm just going to move to and I'm still going to have clients, and I'm sure conversations of people who are still in it and think they want to stay and move out and maybe think they're quite ready. But once they start working with me, most people decide like, okay, I am ready. And that's another part of it too, is like that underlying fear. I mean, it's something I had to battle and work through. I myself have a business coach that I work with. She's phenomenal. And really getting outside of yourself and getting kind of the push you need to kind of make it, because it is so scary. But when you're on the other side of it, it really is incredible. So even when a lot of people say like, I'm not ready, but I'm like, yeah, you actually are.
Yeah. So how would you define like the metrics of being quote unquote ready?
That's a great question. I feel like I hear a lot of people going in circles saying the same thing over and over and over again. And so I use a lot of subconscious techniques. I went actually specifically I do a lot of work on the subconscious mind and the conscious mind as well, because our subconscious, whether we admit it or not, is like running the show. And I'm, like living proof of that.
And the ego. Yeah.
Yeah, getting out of your own way. And that's another huge hurdle, is people saying, I want to so bad and I feel like I'm ready, but I'm not. So they kind of like me, I guess they're not really giving tangible excuses. I'm kind of just hearing the same thing in a different form.
But like, what are the excuses that they're saying? They're just like, I don't have the time, or I don't have the money. Like, what are the excuses?
Yeah, all the common ones that you would think. But I think underneath that, it's not to say that those things can't exist, but underneath that normally, and again, this is something that I myself have dealt with and had to wrestle, and I've gone on the other side of it. But underneath that, I think a lot of times it's just fear and self-sabotage, just kind of as like, oh, I'm not ready. And maybe, and again, this is something I did years ago. It's like, maybe one day, like I have to wait until the right moment, but I could never clearly define like what that right moment was. I didn't even know what it looked like. I just knew that I was miserable and wanted to get out.
Period. So true. And I feel like that's how so many people feel right now.
Yeah. I think a lot of it boils down to also self-belief too, because I think as kids, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to this, but we aren't really taught some of the skills that would be valuable as adults, whether you're, in the corporate world or an entrepreneur. Self-belief is definitely a huge one that I see a lot of people come to the table and they just don't have much of it. Like they might have an inkling of it, and that's what we build on. That small little voice that I had, the not real voice, but like,
the intuition, the guiding factor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think cool thing is like, as women, not to say that men aren't intuitive, but we are so much more, just like shout out to all the women, like so much more intuitive, I think. And you always hear like women's intuition, but it actually is
Mm-hmm.
true. And I think the more I work with clients, the more I develop it, just like knowing something deep in your bone, in your guts, and then having the courage to follow it. Because again, that's how I felt about my move out here. I remember standing on the mountain looking out. Telluride's my favorite place on earth. I was actually in Telluride when I had this moment.
It's
And I
like one of the portals, isn't it? Like one of
yes,
the
yeah,
energy portals.
yep. So that's not surprising at all. But I remember having
Yeah.
the moment, and I'll never forget it, even though it was years ago, of like, I've got to like do this. Like, I will not forgive myself
Yeah.
if I don't do this. And that's another question I use too. Is like, are you still going to be happy if your life's the same a year from now? And the answer is always no.
Yeah. I mean, if I asked myself that question of being like, well, would you like if your life was the exact, no? Would anyone say yes to that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, corporate is not set up, I think, and again, not to say that, it's easy for men, but it's not set up really for women to succeed, I think, and you're
Yeah,
often
no.
kind of torn. And I listened to some of your other podcast episodes too, and one of your guests was like, it's not set up for the woman that maybe wants to get married and have a family, and you're just being pulled in like so many different directions. So I think that flexibility, and also just the feeling of how cool it is that like every penny that comes in the door, it's because like you got it. You're making
Hmm.
yourself rich and not
Yeah.
somebody else. So that's another
Yeah.
thing too.
100%. And I feel like with this new idea of becoming a business owner and becoming an entrepreneur, and there's so many obstacles that come with that. So obviously it was not easy breezy of coming into owning a business and creating a business. What were some of the hurdles that you had to jump? Because you obviously make it sound like, yeah, I just moved to Colorado and then the business was here.
It's not the case. Again, this is like years in the making. I appreciate you saying that though. But yeah, I would say again, some of the biggest obstacles aren't even necessarily pragmatic, tangible things. I mean, some of them are
Mm-hmm.
like time, money. Of course, you've got to have a lot of discipline to really like, it starts with a thought. I mean, it's crazy to me. I think back and I'm like, this entire business that I built, this life, it all just started with like a thought, like a what if. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd say some of the obstacles are both kind of like figurative and literal. I think having like getting organized, but I think step one before that was like figuring out my why. Like I knew that I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
happy working my corporate job, but I even had to figure out like why. I knew some of the more obvious things, like I had a boss I didn't love. So I mean, I think people don't give a lot of credit to that. How much your boss, I don't want to say by any means rules your life, but just how that can seep into like your life outside of work. And I
Oh,
a lot of that, yeah, with clients too. And so we clear all that out. But at any rate, I would say, I think having a plan and figuring out what I wanted to do and why. And then once I got clear on that, figuring out like, okay, now I need to put pen to paper and how am I actually going to build this thing? Like engineer this thing. Like it's a thought. I wrote it down, but now I have to start like doing all the stuff around it and start building it. So I think that was like challenge number one, but that's also the most exciting part of it. In my
yeah.
back is like architecting it, and you're just architecting a thought and just building it out, which is wild. But if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, everything kind of starts with the thought anyway. So
Yeah.
I think that kind of, and this is kind of, I don't want to say fluctuated, but obviously my business has evolved as I've worked with more clients and learned more.
Right.
And the structure of it has stayed the same, the backbone of it, but I think getting
Mm-hmm.
clear on the why. And it can't just be, in my opinion, about money because I've made
Mm-hmm.
great money in my corporate career. The issue was never the money. And there are people that are solely motivated by money, which is totally fine. And those people are
Mm-hmm.
usually in sales, not to knock on them, but that's just not going to like drive me for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say the why, starting with like question number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then building it out was kind of, I don't want to say a struggle, but it took a lot of thought and effort. And it took a lot of like getting honest with myself about what my strengths and my weaknesses are. Um,
Yeah.
and again, I see this a lot with clients, but like name me your weaknesses, being hypercritical of yourself. I'm someone who's pretty type
Mm-hmm.
A and I've got very high standards for myself.
Mm-hmm.
That can sometimes be too much of a good thing. You can kind of lean too much into like perfectionistic thing. So it
Yeah,
was
I feel
very
like that has to be super hard when starting a business. Like, you're doing everything for the first time. Being
yeah.
type A and being a perfectionist, like, you're gonna wait around for forever to get something done.
No, and that's another thing too, is like the waiting. And again, I've been on the other side of this, so I'm able to help people with this. But figuring out, like I think people sometimes have in their head, like there's this magic moment where I'm like, I'm gonna be ready. And there's kind
Yeah,
of just I don't think that there is. I mean, I had
yeah.
to have a lot of like nudging and pushing internally, and I really think that trip that I took a few years ago really did it for me, just solidified, it for me.
Yeah.
But there is never really a perfect moment too. So again, I think that's just kind of self-doubt and limiting beliefs disguised as like, well, once this falls into place and then I can do this. And then once I had this, then I can like
Hmm.
move on to the next step. You kind of just have to
Hmm.
like nosedive and go for it. And you
Yeah.
might be the only one that believes in your vision. I think for me,
Hmm.
for a while, I knew that I kind of was. And that's okay because that's not the case anymore. But it might just be you
But
like,
that also has to be horrifying. Like you're going to bed every night and you're like, you hear from other people like, this isn't going to be profitable. And then you're laying in bed at night calculating like, okay, this is how much everything costs. Like, is this actually going to be profitable? Am I ever going to make money from this? Like there had to have been nights like that where there.
yeah, I don't think that exactly. Again, it was more my own inner critic, and I've,
Mm,
all the mindset techniques that I learned in my coaching program that I got certified in have helped quiet that. But I think you're always going to have it. There's never going to be, I never have any negative thoughts ever. It's never that. It's just
yeah.
how you handle them. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of that, the setbacks that I experienced and everything kind of like collapsing at once in my life actually was like fuel to my fire again.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing is learning how to not let setbacks devastate you. And that's something that I definitely used to struggle with, don't anymore, but I've seen clients do it. Like if it's not absolutely perfect, then it means it's not meant to be, which is not the case at all. That's just a stepping
Hmm.
stone and you take what you learn and then it sharpens you for the better. So I think not letting
Yeah.
discouragement creep in or learning how to manage it because you're always going to have moments where you're like one day it's like I'm Oprah and everything's amazing and perfect and the next day it's like everything's going to hell and you feel like your hair's on fire. So learning how to
Yeah.
like I think building up tolerance for that too is another thing too.
Yeah. And one thing a word that I had learned from my early days of engineering was through a calculus professor, and he said, you have to have good stick-to-itiveness, which
Wow.
I feel like that is the number one skill that any person can have. And I think if I don't end up using my mechanical engineering degree for the rest of my life, like I learned problem solving and
Yeah.
learned that no matter how hard that you try, like for me with studying for exams, like I would study for days for an exam, like
Sounds like me.
become a recluse. Yeah, become a recluse. And like when I hear that other people in STEM, like STEM girlies, are becoming entrepreneurs, it is not surprising to me because we are so tolerant to failure of
Yeah.
studying, 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 throwing your best out there and getting a D. And getting a D and being like, yeah, I did it. And then that just becomes your norm and your default. And like you just accept that a D is passing and you
Yeah.
accept that you're moving on to the next course, you're moving on to the next day, and all is good.
Yeah, I think definitely this is kind of a metaphor for life too, is just like you said, like a certain degree of like fault tolerance and being able to like,
Mm,
once you fall, brush yourself off, take the nuggets, the golden, wisdom of nuggets, like what did I learn? And just keep marching forward, one foot in front of
yeah,
the other. So it is
yeah,
kind of like I'd say owning a business is sort of like a metaphor for life, really, in a lot of ways.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely very multifaceted, and you have to wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
And the part about also entrepreneurship is that it's a lonely endeavor. You spend a large portion of your time alone, and I feel like a lot of the people that I'm talking to are pretty young and they develop these companies in their 20s, which typically your 20s is a time where other people are going out to the bars and getting drunk or going on bachelorette trips every weekend or going to Nashville, and these all revolve around drinking. But I feel like that is just so what's ingrained in 20-year-old society. And to be sort of that recluse, if you will, of being like, nah, I'm going to put my head down and start this business, that had to feel lonely at times.
I'm lucky that I'm like a very outgoing, I'm very social, but I'm an introvert at my core. So in all that,
Hmm.
I think people have this idea, they're like, oh, she hates everyone. And like, she just wants to be left alone. That is not the case. I love
Yeah, yeah,
community.
yeah.
I really do. And I love help building communities, which is why, I'm so lucky that I actually have tons of entrepreneur girlfriends. It felt like when I decided to do this, it sort of opened the floodgates of like a community of very similar women to me. So
Hmm.
I've struggled with other things again, but I never felt this like sense of like aloneness because I was very
Hmm.
fortunate enough that I just magically met a community full of women and it seemingly
Yeah.
randomly too, it was kind of funny, which is another reason why I don't believe in coincidences necessarily, that, entrepreneurship really is starting to like, I don't want to say take over, but it grows every year, right? This
Yeah.
industry. So I've never really felt that loneliness. I've definitely felt, other things like the fear of like, oh my God, what if this doesn't work? But I think for me, one of
Hmm.
the things that helps overcome that and kind of quiet that voice is like, I keep meeting great people, meeting great clients, and I'm like, it is working, actually.
Yeah.
It might not be perfect in where I want it to be, but nothing ever is, and no one is perfect either. So I remind myself and my clients of that too.
Yeah. And I have been on this like soapbox recently of there is going to be a renaissance of just a rebirth of people doing passion projects
Yes.
and reintegrating themselves into their life's purpose and not feeling like they have to be a part of the 9 to 5, which
Yep.
with every person that I talk to, I feel like that is just more and more solidified. So hearing it from you, 100%, yeah.
I love that. That really makes my heart happy. Like, even if, whether or not these are people that I know or I impact or clients, like, I love that people are being more honest with themselves and living from more of like a heart-centered place. Because
Hmm.
and you only get one life. You're not, and I tell this, to myself sometimes, I'm like, you're not a cat. We don't get 9 lives. Like, not that I identify as a cat.
Real.
So yeah, exactly. Like, again, the running out of excuses things, like, you might as well just like shut up and do it and just try.
Hmm.
And you'll
Yeah.
figure it out along the way. So
And one of my favorite pieces of advice that I've received is from a mentor that I had. And he was like, you know what? You're debt free. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have any kids. You have nothing but yourself to take care of. Now is the perfect time for you to take a high risk bet on yourself. And if it
yeah,
doesn't pay off, the worst thing that's going to happen is you go back to corporate America. The best thing that's going to happen is your life changes entirely. So
yeah,
the choice is yours to make, but why not go for that reaching
for the start.
ambition of, yeah, exactly. And that to me, I'm just like, girl, you're so right.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, again, I'm lucky that I have supportive people around me, but my uncle, who I'm pretty close with, who is kind of a mentor, he does not work for himself. But I've always just found
Hmm.
if I need like the brutal truth, I can go to him. But he's like
We
kind.
all need that.
Oh, yeah, but he's like nice. I remember I was having one of these days, this was like over a year ago, or maybe
Hmm.
100%, just like, oh my God, the sky's falling and I didn't do this perfectly. And I said, what if this doesn't work out? Like, I'm terrified. And he's like, well, what if it does?
Yeah.
Which I just was stunned, as corny as that sounds. I just had nothing to say. And I'm like, God, what
Yeah.
would it
Yeah.
take, if it does work out? And then
Hmm.
I just started on my entrepreneurial journey, just again, feeling like, what am I doing? And
Hmm.
having that structure yet, which gave me that was a big sigh of relief once I actually again took that pen to paper and started thinking and asking myself, like, okay, what if this does work? What would that look like? And that's one of the exercises I give
Yeah.
clients actually is like, if you knew the answer was going to be yes, what do you want? Like, what do you really want? Not some
Yeah.
like, I want to make, again, you can want to make X amount of money. That is totally fine. But like, what is your deepest, like, I don't want to say inner child because I'm not a therapist, but like, a lot of you that I was like,
I feel like that's a woo-woo term now, though. I feel like the woo-woos have adopted the inner child, and it's no longer a therapeutic term.
yeah, I feel like they've kind of lent it to us.
Yeah.
Not someone who's like an inner child healer by any means, but I oftentimes think, like, again,
Hmm.
Ivy 2 years ago would be incredibly proud of like
Yeah.
Ivy today, which is also amazing to see with clients too, just to like watch people grow, see how far they come, and watch somebody who really kind of initially didn't necessarily believe in themselves. Maybe like 1% of them believe
Yeah.
themselves, but then all of a sudden, like, they're getting clients and they're getting paid and like
Yeah.
erupting, and it's so cool. Like, you can't see it, but I just got chill bumps talking about
I
it. Like,
love that.
yeah,
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh, I love that. Yeah. And an exercise that I did, but not intentionally, like it was just something that my coworker and I were talking about. He's like, yeah, why don't you just buy a lottery ticket and like see if you win? And which is like something I've heard before, but then I thought about it. I'm like,
yeah,
what if I did win? Like, what would I want to do? Like, if money was not something that I had to take into consideration, if I really had no care about what money did for me because it was just there, what would I do? And then that was when I had the realization that like my podcast needs to be way more purpose driven. It needs to be about women's voices. It needs to be about women building businesses and doing things outside of like what the expectation is of just doing a 9 to 5. And at that point in time, I was like, oh my God, that is what I need to be doing.
yeah, I love that. I love that you like listen to that intuition and that voice, and I think it's incredible and like beautiful that you built this community, and like, thank you from I think the term is fempreneur, but thank you from a fempreneur for like, building this environment and this community. I think it's amazing. So
Yeah, and I appreciate the words, and I'm just lucky to have people like you to be able to talk to and be able to hear about your experiences because I feel like there's so many women, and clearly you've seen that, that are
Yeah.
trying to do what you're doing of building a business and building maybe something that can help other people. And it's just so powerful to hear that from another woman. And it's so powerful to hear like what they're doing and what worked for them and what didn't. And which brings me to my next question of like, there had to have been things that you have done, and there had to be things that you tried that you were like, I
Yes.
don't recommend doing this. I don't think anyone should ever do this.
Yeah, and again, this is more of like a figurative answer, but it's so true. And this is why mindset really is integral and it's the backbone of what I do. It's not just helping them build the business, but it's figuring out, again, what do they want and why, and then kind of building from there. But at any rate, I would say one thing not to do, I'm actually going to list a couple things, the obsessive looping thoughts. And this is one thing that, again, I struggled with a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I'm lucky that I'm not to say that I don't ever worry or have negative thoughts, but again, I know how to snap myself out of it now. I have the mindset tools to help me and my clients get out of their own way. But I would say saying negative things about yourself, wondering about the what ifs, the obsessive, just draining. And this is not to say that we need to walk around because this is so not true and it's not realistic. Like everything's perfect all the time and we live in Barbie world and that's
Yeah.
not it. But again, I'm like living proof that you can have what you want.
Yeah.
Like the life that I envisioned a few years ago is now my life, which is just wild to think about. So I would say the beating yourself up, the rumination, the negativity, and it doesn't need to go from like the world is on fire to everything is perfect. You can use bridge thoughts.
Mm,
Like again, kind of the example that I referenced with my uncle, God, what if this doesn't work out? But like, okay, what if it does? Just
yeah.
down that thought to something a little more like manageable, almost in chunks, and getting yourself
Mm-hmm.
to a place where you can feel calm and centered and kind of dive back in and get back into work. So I allow myself and my clients, like I'll hold space for worry thoughts and negativity because it's so human and it's so normal. And I think it's almost
Right.
impossible to not have those moments, but we just don't
Sorry,
have.
you're not allowed to worry. You're not allowed to stress. No
Yeah, I
stress.
know, right? No, that in and of itself I think is toxic because I think you
Yeah.
sometimes just have to let yourself like feel it and deal with it. But I think sitting in it and then letting yourself spiral is not something I would recommend
Mm-hmm.
because you don't make really clear-headed decisions from there, and you're not
And
in
you
a
don't progress when you're
yes,
spiraling. You're just sitting
yeah.
there and ruminating of like all of these terrible things that could happen,
Or they
and you
might-
just let your anxiety eat away at you
Yep.
while nothing is getting done.
Yeah, I would say another thing is trying as much as possible, and this is sort of related to the example I just gave, but trying to surround yourself with people who are going to be honest in a loving way, call you out when you need it, and hold you to high standards, but not negative Nancy. It's like, don't be around the
Mm,
naysayers who are telling you, and I had some of these too, like, good luck with that.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that is not because that's only going to reinforce the narrative that's going on in your head, right?
right.
I would say not being as much as possible, not being around negative people who don't believe in you. And I would say one thing to do is forgive yourselves for the mistakes because you inevitably are going to make them. And it's just
Right.
you kind of have to put your ego aside and be like, get over it. Like, what did you learn from it? Try not to do it again and just keep moving.
Yeah.
I'd say the
Yeah.
biggest thing is like momentum. I think even when you're making mistakes and it's like messy and it's not perfect, the biggest breakthroughs I've seen with clients and even with myself is just kind of like, again, getting back up, dusting yourself off, plow forward.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there obviously is so many things that come up with becoming an entrepreneur. And it's most of the time outside of the realm of what your flow state is. And when I say flow state, it's like what you enjoy doing and what you want the business to be based on,
Yeah.
as opposed to the things that supplement it. And obviously, like you went to school for cybersecurity, you were in cybersecurity, but you didn't learn about like web design or marketing or any of that stuff. So obviously, that has to be self-taught, and you need clients in order for this to become successful. How did you find clients?
Okay, this is so funny. I get asked this question a lot. And, I'm someone who I think I present better and I'm more comfortable in person. And I am, despite being an introvert, very talkative, if you can't tell, love
Mhm.
people. But I have met all my clients in person. I'm not kidding you. Like,
Wow.
I love to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Things I got in trouble for in school was just like needing to shut up.
Hey, Ivy, be quiet.
Yeah, learning how to be quiet. Like, forget learning how to read and math. Just like teach Ivy how to be quiet, not,
Yeah.
not talk as much. But at any rate, yeah, I literally randomly, like coffee shops, Yoga studios. I love yoga. I'm a yoga. I try and go at least once a week. Again, that helps with
Mm-hmm.
like the rumination and the, just calming your mind down. And even just with business ideas, I found a lot of those have come when I've either completed a workout or been outside in the mountains, because your
Yeah.
brain's, you're in that flow state, to your point.
Yeah.
But I have met them all in person randomly. And
That's
sometimes it's just
wild.
been, yeah. And this is what I tell clients, like, you need to be out there as much as possible, excitedly
Mm-hmm.
talking about your business. And
Mm.
really pushy, because who wants to deal with like a used car salesman type of attitude? That is just such a turn off. And
Yeah.
that would not make me throw down my credit card for somebody. But I have
Right.
to really of like trying to get to know them, telling them what I do and thinking like, how can I help this person? Because I really do.
Yeah.
I'm not Mother Teresa, but at my core, I do love to give and help and nurture,
Yeah.
kind of just an extension of it. So
So what would that interaction look like? You would go up to somebody after doing like yoga and this girl's drinking out of a water bottle and you just go up to her and be like, "Hey, my name's Ivy. Like, I saw you and just thought I would come up and chat to you. Like, do you want to
yeah.
get coffee?"
No, it's so funny. Like, and I have blindly asked, like, this is how I've actually met girlfriends too on coffee dates, just because I'm more than willing to, put myself out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll give you actually a real life example of someone who is a client. This was a couple
Mm-hmm.
months ago. We had just gotten done with a yoga class and I accidentally knocked over my water bottle. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And it normally like leads to small talk and it's,
Oh,
hey,
okay.
Ivy, what's your name? Do you live around here? Like, what do you do? And normally it's actually them asking me. And it
Mm.
always inevitably to some form, it is just the universing of like, I
Yeah.
do this, but I'm really unhappy and I feel stuck and like, oh my God, I hate it. And I'm like, this is somebody I can help.
Yeah.
So it usually is some like weird serendipitous thing. It's not anything that I'm
Yeah.
pushing.
Yeah. And so at that point, like they tell you like, "Oh my God, I do mechanical engineering, but like I hate it." And then at that point you do like your elevator pitch and you're like, "Wow."
Maybe not like that. Yeah, but
Fair.
it's like I'm surprised every time, even though it's happened over and over and over again. I'm like, that's funny. This is why I help women like you for a living. If you ever want to talk, first call's always
Oh.
free, which it is. And I think that's the way, honestly, it should be. Most businesses, I think, do, they have a free discovery call, but why would you invest in something if you don't know that you're a fit? So it's less about getting someone on the hook and more about like making sure that we're both a fit for each other. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's normally how that conversation goes, and it's always a yes. And whether
Mm-hmm.
they sign or not, I like knowing that, and I've had people come back too.
Mm-hmm.
Heard that from other entrepreneur friends too. You might not sign somebody on the dot right there on the spot, but a lot of people end up coming because it
Yeah.
might not be the right time for them, and not in a way where they're using an excuse, but they might not be ready. But I've had people come back to me months later and their circumstances have changed and now they're like, okay, this is really getting to a point where like I'm ready to act because this isn't working. This meaning their
Yeah.
job. So
Yeah. And I feel like that's also an interesting point because you'll
yeah.
have clients and then to me, if I think about like career coaching, once you have coached someone, especially in the realm of like corporate of okay, you're moving into this realm of maybe you want to go and pivot career choices or maybe you want to start a different like promotion path or whatever that is. I feel like that is like to me seems like a one and done type thing of like, oh, this is what you recommended to do, I'm gonna go do that. Like how does your coaching work in the sense of you're like, we have a 6 month membership or we're like a gym and you do it month by month, or what does it look like?
Yeah, so I offer two packages. I'm probably going to expand these, but normally I do 3 and 6 month packages with people, and I follow a
Mm-hmm.
methodology that I myself came up with. PATH. So PATH, Purpose, Alignment, Transformation, and Harmony. This is a great time for me to
Mm-hmm.
actually talk about some of the mindset tools that I use. But again, the biggest thing that I notice with clients and in myself is there's so much crap subconsciously holding us back that has to be
Mm-hmm.
cleared out before we can start programming in good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see a lot of self-sabotage. And again, this was me a few years ago. So I've lived it. So I know how to like help get somebody, out to the other side of it. And I can now more easily identify it, I think. But I take them through the acronym no matter what, whether it's a 3 month or a 6 month package. And it's a lot of mindset work. So like I mentioned earlier, I graduated from a coaching cohort. It's called Yes Supply. And it's
Mm-hmm.
based entirely upon, some conscious techniques. One of the ones that I love to use, It's called EFT tapping, so emotional freedom
Mm-hmm.
technique. And it is like, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's literally the most
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I'm telling you, it freaking works. It's something that I use.
Yeah, I follow a girl, and I actually had her on the podcast, who does EFT tapping, and I always see her tapping, and I'm like, what a seriously interesting like career path slash like healing mechanism.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, whenever I first saw it, I was like, this is the most hippie, insane. Like, what the hell are these people doing? Like, stop it.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it works.
Yeah.
Neuroenergetic coding is another one that I use a lot. So again, kind of deprogramming all the crap that needs to get out of the way so we can program in the good stuff. So a lot of mindset work. But in addition to that, I'm not just helping them with mindset work, it's the actual building of the business. So a lot of the things that
Mm-hmm.
I had a coach help me with. Getting clear on your why is always step number one. What do you want to do? What would your ideal kind of outlook look like? And then we sort of reverse engineer in there. So having a marketing plan, figuring out what her elevator pitch is, and then her service offerings. But we've got to do it from a place that's
Yeah.
aligned, and you've got to truly be, I'm not going to use the word ready because that's not it. But I learned the hard way. I had to get myself straight mentally and be in a state where I was actually ready to receive the success. Because you can tell
Mm.
yourself, like, I want it and I'm ready for it all day, but then you're acting in another way and you're wondering why things, aren't moving. So a lot of things that I help
And
clients,
tell me what that looked like for you.
the kind of being in my own way thing.
Of being in a place where you're not like you're telling yourself you're ready to receive, but you're not actually.
Yeah. So again, I think one of the things that I used to struggle with was just like the freaking rumination of like not being able to turn my
Mm-hmm.
brain off, which is another reason why, I love yoga and I really do practice what I preach. I use these tools on myself. I would never use anything
Yeah.
on a client that I haven't experienced myself and know
Mm-hmm.
like this actually works. So for me, I think it was the rumination, the attachment to the outcome, the being obsessed with like well, will they sign? Will they not? And will they do this? And will they do that? And I'm like, it got so exhausting to where I was like, brain, just calm down, like chill out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
in a way, I had to reach a point that I see my clients get to the point where not the running out of excuses thing, but just to a point where like, it's just gotten to this point where like, I can't anymore. And I feel like you
Yeah.
almost have to like wear yourself out as bad as that sounds to be like, I'm ready to choose something
Mm-hmm.
else. So for me, I think it was the rumination, the overthinking, and I think a hard realization, that I realized in building my own business was like initially, of course, no one overnight makes the money they want to make and their business is
Mm-hmm.
constantly evolving as it should be. But I think the self-worth piece, and this is something that I work with people on because it's just so huge of really actually truly feeling like, and I don't even use the word deserve. I used to use that word anymore. I don't even think it's the right word for it. Like feeling like you're worthy of receiving all the things you want. And the first step to that is getting clear on like what you want and why.
Yeah.
And sometimes we tell ourselves we want things that we kind of like don't actually. And I've done this. Like younger Ivy did that.
I feel like it's such an easy thing to do because I feel like inside of each of us, and I've described this as like there's two wolves inside of you. The one that wants to like conform to what everyone else is doing in society because that would be easier and that's the path of least resistance. And then you have this other side of you, this other wolf that's like, hey girl, we want to be creative, we want to be ambitious, we want to do all those things. And then they just have this internal yapping session in your brain. And it just becomes this thing of like, okay, which one is right? Which one do I want to believe? And each of them has two significantly different outcomes of obviously, like what you're saying, that these people are coming to you and they're telling you that they want to stay in corporate when in reality, those girlies want to leave and do their own thing.
Yeah, I've never had someone who has not eventually transitioned out of it. Because normally
Yeah.
when I press on that, I'm like, can you tell me why you want to stay in corporate? It's like crickets or
Stability.
so that's why I'm saying the things that we tell ourselves that we want, we might not always want them. Sometimes we do.
Yeah.
Again, that's one of the reasons why I'm probably going to revamp some of my service offerings, which I'm in the process of doing now. But it's not to say that you can't think you want to stay in corporate and then you end up staying, which is totally fine. But either way, whether you stay or you leave, we do a lot of mindset work because
Yeah.
it's not usually outside circumstances I found that like prevents
Mm-hmm.
people having the success or the life that they want. It's just like what's going on in here. And again, I
Yeah.
learned that way too. So you really can, like, the possibilities really are endless. I think there's just a lot of internal chatter and some of it's
Mm-hmm.
good, it's helpful because had I not listened to that like small voice in my head years ago, maybe I wouldn't be in Colorado. Maybe I wouldn't have this business. So I think being
Right.
willing to like use discernment and figure out what's a helpful thought that's going to drive you forward versus, not, and what's going to hold you back. So
Yeah. And I imagine that there's so much that also goes into maintaining your business as well. So obviously, like a majority of the hard part is over. Majority of, okay, trying to figure this a whole new thing out, trying to figure out entrepreneurship, trying to figure out what I'm really looking to do and the why behind it. But there's still a whole bunch of hard in front of you. And I think that that's also what you're acknowledging is that you have to revamp your offerings and you're seeing a coach as well because you need to continue progressing. You want to continue progressing. And I feel like that is also an important part to recognize is that there is still growth once you have a set business, even when you are profitable. So what is your recommendation to make sure that you're continually leveling up and you're continually making improvements that allow for growth within yourself as well as the company?
Yeah, I love that question. So like I said earlier, I think surrounding yourself with people who are honest in a loving way and will give you the truth even when it's hard. So having outside objective voices besides your own. So for me, I'm lucky that all of my girlfriends are brutally honest, but in a loving way. And I love that about them. That's, part of the reason why I was like drawn to these friends in the first place, I think, is because they value the truth. So I think being around people who are not just, they're definitely not tearing you down, but they're not sucking up to you and telling you that everything is like rainbows and kittens and butterflies and, willing to call you out, but in a way that's for your good, and because they love and care about you and want to see you succeed. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say. And then just having a growth mindset too. Like I'm somebody who is a lifelong learner. I love to learn. I love to read. I've always been like this. So any piece of like new information that I can get my hands on, I love and I feel grateful for and excited for. So just like being a nerd, I guess would be another, just loving to learn, being a nerd. I love, tap into your inner nerd. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, definitely great advice. And I feel like that is also probably advice that you also give your clients. But my next question then is, so obviously you love to see women come in, ask you questions, but what does your ideal client look like? Because obviously not everyone is going to be an ideal client as much as you'd like them to be. So what is something that you're looking for and how did you look to define that?
Yeah, you hear this a lot with, again, other entrepreneurs, but a lot of people will say, and I didn't realize it until I started like living this out, is you're helping kind of the younger version of yourself. And that's part of the reason why it's such a joy and a privilege to be able to do that. Because in a way, I mean, you're giving back regardless. But yeah, I work with clients all across the board in terms of like industry. So there's no specific industry because that's almost secondary to like, if they're leaving corporate, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because there's skills I learned in my cyber career that I still, use to or the things I've learned from like the corporate world that I kind of, I guess, incorporate. So that's a little bit harder to answer in terms of just what industry or sector they're coming from. But I would say that any woman that kind of knows she's got this like voice in her head, that she knows she's not totally happy, and there's some part of her, it doesn't have to be all of her, that is ready to take the leap and believes in herself. And again, it could 1%. But when you have a coach and someone who's holding you accountable, like they can help you get to that 100%. And it's not 100% every day. So someone who's got a growth mindset, who has like a small voice in the back of her head that's like, this is not my life. I'm not going to be happy with this. And I think creativity is always a good one too. So you don't have to be obviously an artist for that. Yeah, I'd say someone with a growth mindset who wants to learn, wants to grow, and sees themselves, whether or not they actually own a business or not, as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Ready to take the leap, even if they're not fully ready.
Yeah, honestly, it's something that's really hard to recognize as well, as especially if you're in that point in your life of being like, I don't think I'm ready yet, but it is something that's still on my radar. I feel like that is such a difficult thing to try and overcome. So what is like one piece of advice that you would give to somebody that is in this transient stage of being like, I'm not really where I'm at right now. I know I kind of want to start this thing. I don't feel like I'm ready yet. What's something that you would just tell them right off the bat?
So this is one thing again that I do is I journal every single day. And I think it helps with my own accountability, but it is so cool to look back on like years ago, again, fantasizing and daydreaming about where I want to be years from now, which I am. But at any rate, I'd say keeping a track record of stuff. And I've had people do this before. Like if you're not ready, totally fine. But if you're ever interested in having another call, do me a favor, like start journaling. It doesn't have to be every day, but usually a lot of what comes out is just like stream of consciousness, and a lot of it's negative. So I've had to go back and look back and be like, I finally had to get to a point where you reach a breaking point. And again, that's typically where the rebuilding comes in. I've seen it in my own life. So I don't know that I have one specific piece of advice, but I think it's just like brutal self-honesty, which is really a lot of people. So I think for most people, the way that shows up is like, I have to get to a point where I'm so down and out that I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. Like, this cannot be me to 65.
Yeah. And that is, And my favorite book of all time is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, and he journals. You love that book?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut across. It made me cry.
No.
I'm like sensitive little like.
No, same. I read it right after a breakup, and when I tell you it changed my life, and then I literally tell every single person that I meet about this book, and you would think like Matthew McConaughey, just a rom-com guy, doesn't know what he's talking about. He is such an intuitive person.
I agree.
He also is very aligned with who he is as an individual. He's also like, he is the definition of manifestation and allowing for things to come into your life. Because there's so many people that I've read that have also read the book and have been like, he just is so lucky. He just came into all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, because he put that energy out there.
Yeah, I don't even think it's luck. It's like allowing, and I've learned this too. And this, when I preach to clients, is just again learning how to like chill out, get out of your own way, and sometimes let things unfold. The detours and the setbacks really have like kind of led me to owning like my dream business, being in the state I want to be, having the privilege to help other people, just kind of allowing things to unfold. So yeah, I think the book does a phenomenal job. He's like way more spiritual than I think people give him credit for.
Oh, so spiritual. And there were so many things that you had said in this conversation that reminded me of things that he had said in the book, like how you said that you would ruminate about whether or not a client would sign, and it wasn't until you were like, okay, I can't think about it. It reminded me of the time when he was like, you have to act like you don't need it, but you want it. And that is exactly. And that is just something that I have drawn to my core of like, I don't need it, but it is something that I want. You have to act like it's not needed for you to survive in order for you to find it. And life changing.
I know. It's a hard balance to strike because you've got to be hungry enough for it that you can't just be like, okay, it'll just magically, because that's not how building business works, obviously. But I think it's finding that balance. And I think a lot of that comes with like self-awareness. And that's why I value journaling so much, is like knowing that you want it, but knowing that it might not show up. This is another thing too that I've seen with my clients and with myself. It might not show up in the way you expect it to. And a lot of times it doesn't. It's wild. But when you cling to it so hard and you're like white knuckling, that's when I think you get in your even more, and there becomes like more anxiety, more rumination, you're more prone to mistakes. So learning how to like relax and allow and kind of be in the flow, which is one thing I think women are naturally good at, but I think corporate America has done a wonderful job at making them like do the white knuckling and the obsessive and the type A and all these things that are actually detrimental, when in reality, like when I've loosened my grip a little bit, that's when things have really actually sped up.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like what you said, corporate America is a structure that was designed to benefit men, and to allow for yourself to acknowledge that like, hey, I can still be myself. I can still be present in this space as a woman. And it may not be like the response that you're looking for. It may not be the promotions that you're looking for, but allowing yourself to be open-minded of, hey, if like a recruiter comes to your desk and says, hey, maybe take this job, take it into consideration. Don't immediately pass it off because it's not something that you immediately identify with or that is in your salary range. Like maybe consider it for a second, because maybe it's coming across your desk for a reason.
Yeah, and I'd say I agree with that. Like I said earlier, everything happens for a reason in my mind. And, I think just being open, even though it's so hard, because I think we're taught to kind of be on guard and always sort of like looking over our shoulders. Being open has really helped like my clients, and it's helped grow my business as well. Because again, you never know, like opening one door, I think of it almost like the Matrix or a maze. Like you never know where that door is going to lead. You know what I mean? So that's cool to think about. Like trying to think of possibilities rather than like, what if this goes wrong?
Yeah. And I feel like the white knuckling analogy is 100% accurate in the sense of if you're grasping onto something so tight, nothing else has the ability to enter into that grip because you are just grasping onto this idea that may or may not happen. And as soon as you accept that it may or may not happen, other abilities and other opportunities start filling into that grasp that you have that may end up becoming something else and flourishing into something else.
Yeah, I totally agree with that analogy. And I think one of the beautiful things that I'm like privileged, one of the many reasons I feel like really privileged to help people in this way is the piece for me that really stood out that I get to help nurture in clients is resiliency and self-belief. So that's kind of at the undercurrent, the underbelly of my business too. Again, when you get knocked back down, like getting back up and trying, and that's a theme that's kind of woven into how I coach and help people build businesses in a sustainable way too. Because again, you're not going to be 100% energized or a bunny every day. That's why having the why and knowing what it is and being able to come back to that is so important. It can't just be like, well, I have to go to work, because like I need the paycheck and that's very real. Obviously you need money to live, right? But that's just not satiating a lot of people. I think people, to your point earlier, they're getting more honest about it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, which is especially a good thing for you because then you start increasing your client numbers and taking on new clients.
No, again, it's never like it had to be something, bigger than me. And I kind of knew this, like from a young age, I knew I always felt like a little bit of a weirdo. Like I knew I wasn't a normie. And I think even young me, like not that there's anything wrong with being a normie. I just knew it wasn't my path. But from a young age, I knew that I wanted to do something outside of what I was doing, but I also knew that even bigger than that, than just about like, hey, building an empire, wanting to make a bunch of money, I wanted to help people too. Yeah. And it sounds really corny, but I've had people help me for like literally no reason. It comes back. So
yeah, people love to help, and you'd be surprised about the opportunities that come up just by you sharing information or requesting help. And people love to help. Doesn't matter who they are. They want to feel valuable. They want to feel like someone else saw them and someone else like was able to recognize that they provided value. And it might not necessarily be like their motivating factor as to why they do something, but I think it's like something subconscious in them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, it's like a ripple effect. It's like dominoes. So it's really cool. Because again, I mean, like who knows who's going to see this, podcast, and their life might be changed because of it, which I think is really amazing. Because if I was still chained to a desk working a corporate job, I don't think that I would be having these same thoughts.
Exactly. Well, you probably would be having thoughts of leaving corporate and thoughts of starting your own business, but never act on it. We'll get it matched up. We'll get it figured out.
We'll make it happen. I'm so glad our paths crossed. But yeah, you have a great night too. Hey, and thank you for having me. This was amazing.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
All right, I'll be talking to you soon, okay?
Okay, thanks, Ivy. I'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Consider This Worst podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Ivy and that maybe you're inspired to take a step with your career, which, by the way, just to plug my Instagram and TikTok again, on the Sarah Smiles Network on both TikTok and Instagram, I am doing a giveaway with Ivey Jenkins or Jenkins Solutions for Ivy's free one-on-one session with you to deep dive into your career. Okay, so in addition to that, I also, again, just want to plug my social medias one more time. Again, follow at Sarah Smiles Network on both Instagram and TikTok, and then check us out on YouTube as well. I post all of my podcast episodes in the video format onto YouTube, so be sure to check those out there. And make sure that you're liking, subscribing, following, tagging, sharing, leaving a positive review, sharing with your grandmother, sharing with your best friend, sharing with your sister. That's what it is all about. Sharing is caring. Make sure that you leave a positive review. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you all next week. Bye.